All right, great. It's Tuesday, March 1st, and this is the ALC AIM session for the month of March. I'm Gina Halstead, an ALC coach in Boston. I also run the Biz Launch program for ALC, and the co-host is Hayden Lee. Hayden, why don't you just say hi? Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I think I know everyone, but I'm Hayden Lee. I am an ALC here in Los Angeles. And then I also have my own coaching practice here in LA. And I'm also trying to, the majority of my work is with teens, and I'm also, what's the word, adding to or I'm expanding my coaching practice, and I'm working with young entrepreneurs now as well.
Fabulous. So what I thought we could focus on today, at least to start, are some questions that we didn't get to in February that had been supplied to us by some coaches. And I thought they were good questions, and they could be on the mind of everybody. The first one is that this coach says, I'm interested in working on developing the professional identity of a coach, learning how life coaches see themselves and how they present that self to others, which is an interesting question. And I'm actually not quite sure how I'm going to answer that, but I'd like us all to think about it, and then maybe we'll go around and share some thoughts and see what we develop. So the professional identity of a life coach.
Well, I'll jump in here. I mean, it kind of makes me think about like the elevator speech, kind of like as coaches, we kind of need, that's what I'm thinking. That's the first thing that jumped on me is kind of that elevator speech to help us be able to tell someone in like 10 seconds or 15 seconds or less what it is that we do. So I think that's one part of it. I almost see this as like two different parts though, because a professional identity of a life coach, I feel like that's how a coach comes up with something to explain what he or she does. Maybe something you would put on LinkedIn and your elevator speech and kind of a networking event. But then the second part is, I think it's very interesting how life coaches see themselves. And I think that's a very life coachy question, but I think that's important too. I've never really sat down and really think about it, but that's really cool. That I guess maybe it's like, how is what we're presenting to other people also what we believe and how we see ourselves. So that's kind of like a cool way to look at it. So I guess aligning those two is pretty powerful, I guess, to make sure how we want to be seen is also how we're being seen.
And I'm kind of bringing in a chapter around branding, establishing your own brand. When I think of professional identity, I think part of that is also a brand. How do you want other people to be perceiving you? And that will differ remarkably from coach to coach. So there will be some coaches whose personal brand is very, say, outdoorsy, some who are very athletic, some who are very focused on certain age boys or girls, some who want to be known as the study expert, others who perceive themselves as more the nurturer, so you get into more of the personal qualities with that.
Yeah, Gina, that's a great point in the branding, that makes me think of like the personal story. And I think that's so important for us to identify our personal story as to why we do what we do and kind of what led us to this point, because that's also what's going to make you different, because there's, like thousands of coaches, in the ICF, for example, but they're different. So I guess, bringing back to the elevator speech, that's like 15 seconds, but then let's say someone wants to develop that further and really ask you like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, how are you different? What led you to this? And I think we all need to take time to develop that and really think about our personal story, because that's really what's really going to make us stand out. So it's almost even thinking like on our websites, what's going to go on our About Me page? You know, it's like, that's our professional and personal identity. I think it's because it's a professional identity of a life coach. So I almost see it as professional/personal identity of a life coach, because I think it goes together. It's like the personal story is what led us to choosing to do this as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was going to say, because I came from a counseling background, and I always struggled to find out like what was my identity within counseling, because I felt like there were some just assumptions people make about what counselors should look like, and I felt like I fit some of it, but I didn't, something always felt off. And when I discovered coaching, I was like, wow, this is so me. It's more, forward thinking, goal oriented, helping clients come up with their own solutions. So I think that, with this question, there's certain things about like, how do we fit into coaching? And then there's certain things that we all have in common as coaches, as a professional identity, which for me, I think of the ICF. When I hear professional identity, it's like the core competencies, things like that. But then it's also the brand, the personal story, and just a mix of all of that, and why it's a good fit for us. Like, that's what came to my mind is like, why did I choose coaching? What about it drew me to it as a profession?
Mm-hmm. And I think an extension of that is, what do you love about it? What about the work really thrills you? And because that's when your energy comes alive, when you identify that and articulate that.
I'll jump in. Just, I guess, same as what Lindsay was saying. Lindsay, are you coming from a school counselor or LCSW?
It was mental health, LPC.
Oh, mental health. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, me coming from school counseling and still in school counseling, but I think for me in identifying or getting this life coaching identity it really popped for me a few years ago when I realized that, yes, this life coaching route really did give me some ways to reach kids the way I really believe I should, and the way I should empower them. So I think I'm new in this coaching all of a year, but it definitely, I think I'm on the right path. And so I'm feeling stronger and stronger in that, because my mission, and it's kind of all coming together of, 30 years of other jobs and careers working with kids, but then realizing with the life coaching, I just feel like that's my place and that's my purpose or where I can really reach kids. So I think I'm just feeling stronger in that. So I'm feeling more confident to be able to say I'm an academic life coach. I'm still also a school counselor, but I think because I feel like that's really popped for me, I just am feeling more confident in being able to say that. So I think I guess my point is, as I dial into my mission and keep reminding myself this is why I'm doing this, then I just feel stronger in being able to really say I'm an academic life coach. So it's just, I think it's just been a process for me, but it's definitely getting stronger. So.
What is important for each of us in portraying our identity? What do you want to make sure gets communicated?
I would say for me, it's my values. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hi, Julie.
And so as I decide, like Hayden was saying, he's adding different specialty areas, and as we specialize and add different things under the big, broad coaching umbrella, making sure that I am still aligning with my values and portraying those values out, regardless of the specialty area, is really important to me.
And I've seen some coaches and some entrepreneurs with websites that actually detail their values. Then some coaches will call them values. Here are my core values. Here are my top 5 values, something like that. Others may call them something different, but when you really look at them, you realize that's the person's value that they're communicating, so that their audience can understand more about them, who they are as a person, and what they bring as a professional.
And I think that helps maybe make that initial decision to reach out to the person.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have an affinity and you have an alignment with that person's core values, then that's already setting up the potential for being a match to work together. Because as we all know, there's not always a match. Just because somebody's a coach doesn't mean it's the right person for this client at this particular time on these particular topics.
Right.
So I just realized something that I want to add to my About Me page for my websites is, I was recently doing a workshop with an independent college counselor, and then he's also a creative. He was a creating writing major at Northwestern, so he was talking about in the personal statements for students how important it is to show vulnerability, because that's really what connects you with other people. And I just realized in my professional identity, I've known this, but I actually don't outwardly say it in any of my websites, and I want to encourage all of you to express vulnerability as to why you're a coach, and expressing some sort of challenge or adversity that you've had to overcome. Because I think we all have some sort of story in our personal story to why we're doing this that has to do with being vulnerable and has to do with overcoming adversity. And I think putting it out to the world, and I think that's going to lead to more connections. People will connect with us better. And like Julie was saying, when you put yourself out there and express your vulnerability, there's going to be more matches. People, oh my gosh, I felt that same way. I understand where he or she's coming from. And I think, what Lindsay and Kay were talking about from a counseling point of view, you're seen more of it as an expert. Right. It's like you're supposed to know all the answers and you guys know what's going on. But as coaches, we're equal partners. And it's okay that we don't know. And it's okay that we've had a lot of challenges ourselves. And I think it's okay to express that because that's part of what we do. And I just got really excited about that I just realized that I need to be more vulnerable and put it out there, because that makes me a better coach.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, can I add to that, Hayden? That just made me think of something, because being the school counselor, I'm always trying to, especially in the school setting, everyone's looking to me to have the expertise on why a kid is not doing well. But interesting, I've had a coach here locally that has helped me with some of my business, setting up my business. And she mentioned to me last summer I had a really bad bicycle accident, and I was pretty down for the count for quite a while. And it was just a huge thing for me. I had never had that severe of an accident. And she mentioned to me, she actually did a podcast with me, and she asked me if I wanted to talk about that. And I was so struck by, no, why would I talk about my personal life? And so I didn't in the podcast. I was like, no, I don't think I should do that. But soon after that, it did give me something to think about. And I thought more about that. And I did a presentation with my daughter's sorority at her university. And I decided to throw that in about my bike accident. And I even showed, of all things, I really put myself out there, a really gory picture of my sitting in my hospital bed with my whole arm and road rash and everything, because I just thought the picture spoke everything. So it was totally gory, but I had some of these girls come up to me after and comment that they wanted to hear more about that story. They wanted to hear more about what I was talking about, of how that was such a hard thing and how I had to come back from that. And so, I don't know, I think I've been trying to get around that idea, or getting to that idea of sharing more personally because I'm always in this professional place. But I guess it's a good thing to think about, and it can help connect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think showing vulnerability, showing a more private side of ourselves can make us more approachable. And you know, I think that's what happens when we do that.
One thing for me, I think, and it's kind of, I feel like it piggybacks with vulnerability, is also authenticity, like I want my authentic self to come through and people to know like who they're going to be working with, what they're going to be getting with me. And I think vulnerability is part of that too, is to be able to open up and let clients know. Because I think as coaches, we're encouraging clients to find their authentic selves. So I think us showing that and showing, not just demonstrating that as who we are is also a good thing. So that's something professionally I'm really working on, is like, well, who am I? And how can I communicate that and make sure that everybody knows, like, this is who I am, this is what you'll get as a client, and this is who, you'll work with me, versus the counseling as the expert, and we had to hold back and things like that. And I mean, it's still obviously in coaching about the client, but I just feel like I'm more able to be myself as a coach.
And that gets to a very fundamental question that many coaches, even very, very seasoned coaches, struggle with. Ooh, sorry, let me turn this off. And that is, who am I as a coach? And who do I want to be as a coach? Who am I becoming as a coach? That series of questions, I think, reveals a lot to each of us.
Well, that brings up something that I thought of mine, Gina, is like one of the best compliments I've had from one of my clients is she told me, and this is an adult client, that she told me that one of the best things that she's learned about me is that in terms of what I preach in my coaching, that she sees that I live it as well. And that was such a compliment to me, and that really meant a lot, that she said, like, you don't just teach and talk about all this stuff about, growth mindset and positivity and resilience, but she's like, I see that in you and you live that in your life. And that made me so happy. And I think that's definitely what I aim to be, is the type of coach that like walks the walk and talks the talk.
Yeah. Oh. So anything else come to mind on this thought of developing your own professional identity as a life coach? And one of the things that occurs to me that's beyond perhaps our qualities is also, how do you want to run your practice? What flexibility is there for your clients? So, there are some coaches who you have your time, you have exactly 15 minutes or 45 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever your session length is. You do not communicate in between sessions. There are others who are much more flexible and open to having chats and notes in between. There are coaches who are much more casual, and that's what they portray in their websites. They're wearing, jeans and t-shirts, and there are others who portray a more perhaps professional look in terms of their attire and the look of their site. There are some that are more playful. There are some that are more serious. That's a whole nother dimension to think about. What are you comfortable with, and how do you want to communicate that with your clients? Okay, well, we covered a lot of territory on that. I think it gave us some things to think about. Why don't we move on to the other question we had outstanding? And then if you have any other thoughts on this, we can certainly get back to it. The other question that a coach had was really about asking powerful questions and having a flow of coaching. And the question is, from a practical standpoint, I have questions about coaching and how coaches come to decide upon what questions are best to ask when. What strategies we can use in terms of go-to questions when we're unsure. Oh, did we cover this last time? What questions to ask? And how to develop a philosophy of questioning that it can help us become the most effective at what we do. Did we cover that in February? Does this sound familiar?
I know we did talk about questions because I mentioned the one thing, Gina, that I was going to do to practice, but I forget how much of that we covered.
Well, why don't we dive into it? This is really about being able to listen deeply and dance with the customer, dance with the client. In the coach training I did, we called it dancing in the moment. And actually, that's one of the core competencies is dancing in the moment with your client. Not leading them in a dance, not totally following their lead, but as they move, you move, and you're kind of reflective of each other. That's a skill that coaches develop over time, and I think an interesting question is how have each of us worked on that skill? What are some of the strategies we've used? What are some of the tools that help us become more comfortable and confident in knowing what direction to go and what questions to ask and helping our client dig deeper?
I was trying to remember back to the beginning, and I think for me what I did was just ask some basic questions so I could feel like I was starting to follow them and where the energy was going. So even if I just asked something like, could you please tell me more about that? or what else? And just let them kind of keep going and going and going until I felt like, oh yeah, now I'm hearing something around stress like 3 times. So then it was like, okay, all right, let's ask a question about stress. So I think for me, it was just that willingness to be like, I have no idea what I'm doing or what I should ask, but I'm just going to say, oh, great. And what else? And just keep at it from my perspective and allow myself to, just step into that and be really vulnerable like we've been talking about. And then it just came. And then that would come sooner. It was like building a muscle, of like being able to detect and be aware of when they're shifting in a dance move or when the energy is coming up so that we could follow it together.
Now, Julie, thank you for sharing that, because as I work with coaches who are new, there seems to be this expectation that this skill should happen very quickly. And it for many coaches, it doesn't. For some, it does. But for many, and I might even venture to say most, it doesn't. And I think, I can relate, Julie, to exactly what you said. I remember in when I was a new coach, being panic struck because trying to think of what I should ask next. And if you just learn to relax and have a handful of questions like yours, what's next? What's important about this for you? even noticing, I notice there's a shift in the energy of your voice. What's going on? That it gives you time to really listen and listen and listen and gain confidence. So thank you for sharing that. At first, it may not be easy.
You know, there's always this quest for me, like in my head, to come up with the right and perfect question at the exact right moment, you know, and so the brain was always going, and then I realized I'm not even present here. I'm in the brain computer crunching all of the perfect questions from the massive lists of available, you know, and so it was like, all right, let's not do that anymore. Let's try something else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think there is the perfect question. Yeah, there are so many avenues that you can go down. Yeah, but getting away from that thought that there's the perfect question, I think, is the biggest challenge for new coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's often reflected in the clients. The clients are always like, I got to get my life right. I got to get my life perfect. You know, they're running the same kind of energy. So I realized that, all right, one of us has got to do something different here. I can't be like, I got to come up with the right question. And they got to I got to change my life just perfectly, you know? And so it's like, all right, that's not helping. So I just realized one of us has got to break the cycle right here.
Uh-huh. And another effective strategy is ask the client, what do you think I should be asking right now? Mm-hmm. What direction do you think we should be going in? Turn it right back over to them.
I was just going to add to all that all that comes from listening.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be really good listeners. And I have had this through all my different professions of listen and then listen some more is kind of a mantra I have in my head. And it's at that point that I keep staying quiet a little bit longer that I actually hear something more and probably what it's really about. So, and then even with a student a week ago, I was able to hear something that she was saying that was what it really was about. And it was really more about kind of this other anxiety that she had. And so then I was able to ask the questions to that. And I think I know when I've hit that spot when their eyes kind of open up and it's like, oh yeah, it's about that. And, you know, and especially these students, they can give me all kinds of stories about why they're not getting their work done. But then all of a sudden I pull out, you know, I'm hearing that it's really more about this one other thing that they keep repeating. And then the second I pull that out, it seems like that's where we coach. So I think, in the beginning, that just comes from listening, or the whole time. It's just listening and really hearing what's underneath it all.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me, thank you, Kay, of agendas. And I just added to the Essential Life Coach Training guide. You know, I added a lot to it. One of the things I added was about different agendas. And I said there's a presenting agenda, a deeper agenda, and the big picture agenda. And you're absolutely right. The presenting agenda isn't really the agenda sometimes, right? And when you really listen, there's a deeper agenda. And I think, and that just comes from curiosity and just like Julie was saying, just kind of digging deeper. Like, what do you mean by that? Or, can you explain more or tell me more about that? Because the presenting agenda may be, I don't get my homework done, but then the deeper agenda may be fear of failure or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think that's really interesting. So for new coaches, especially when they're, the advice I give to new coaches is just really to trust the process and just to listen and just to use your curiosity. And curiosity, is just to show that you care. And also because if you really listen in level 2 listening, usually you can come up with a question that's natural, and because you're naturally showing curiosity. It's like, oh, what do you mean by that? Or oh, you just mentioned that word 3 times. What does that word mean to you? Or something like that. Just, because I think a lot of new coaches, get stuck in their head to ask, like, okay, I have to ask a learning question, then a being question, and then a doing question, and then I have to follow this formula. And I think you have to learn those, quote unquote rules, but then you have to let them go. It's kind of like acting a lot of times is you get comfortable enough with the script. Once you get on stage, you let everything go and just let it flow. And that's the same thing with coaching, is just trusting yourself and trusting the process instead of being in your head. Because if in your head, then you're actually in level 1 listening, right? You're not truly listening from the client's point of view. You're thinking about trying to be a good coach.
One thing for me was the learning that a moment of silence is good. A moment of silence creates space for you to think of the question. Like, you don't have to have that question immediately after they put their period on their sentence. That gives you space to think of the question after listening, and then it also gives the client space, which they probably don't often get. So that was a big learning moment for me in questions like, okay, I don't need to have it right away, and that's okay. I can pause for a second, and that actually helps.
Nor do they need to answer right away.
Yes, exactly. Good point, Nathan.
Because I think a lot of coaches, when they see their clients struggling, they try to help them or try to come up with a different question. And it's like, let them sit there and think about it. That's great. I love awkward silences now.
Yes.
I have a great acronym to help coaches remember the power of silence. And it's the sort of thing you could put above your desk or your computer. The acronym is WAIT. And it stands for, why am I talking? Wait, just wait. Wait for your client to say more. Wait to give them some space.
That's good.
And it really does, if you give yourself, as Lindsay was saying, just to reinforce Lindsay's point, if you give yourself some space between what a client has said, first of all, they often have another thought and add on, but it gives you a moment to reflect. And it slows down the coaching. It demonstrates taking the time to process and reflect. So it's a real gift.
Gina, I also wanted to add one of my kind of like newer favorite things that I was starting to see early on, like when clients in the beginning, they're not used to coaching, they're not used to being asked questions, so their default is, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so before I would be like, okay, well, I would maybe rephrase it, ask a different question. It's almost like the same thing as giving them the silence Hayden talked about. And now it's kind of fun for me. I'm like, okay, here comes the I don't know pattern. Here comes this, and I really like it. And so I'll either pause or I'll make, handle. I'll be like, okay, well, eventually by the third session or fourth session, if they use it and I hear them say, I don't know, I go, what do you think I'm going to say? And then they know themselves. They're like, okay, I keep going. But I don't know, especially with the guys, I noticed is that I don't know is just a default that I'm sure they use all the time with parents and school and teachers. So I used to get frustrated, and now I love it because I think it's a really great opportunity for coaching.
Mm-hmm. So Lindsay, I would love to hear more.
I don't know.
That's exactly my question. I'm like, I would love to hear what you say to them when they say, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. It depends on the client, but I'd be like, sometimes I'll just be like, you really know. I'd be like, let's think about it for a second. One of my favorites was a client was texting me on accountability, and I asked him a question to follow up, and he responded with, I don't know. And I literally wrote back, what do you think I'm going to say to I don't know? And he sent me a paragraph back on what he actually was thinking. So it's really just kind of getting around, like I pointed out to them. I say, listen, you say I don't know a lot, and I think it's you default to that, but I really think you know more than you think you do. It's kind of, I tell them I have faith in them, that they really do know if they take a moment to think about it. And so just kind of around there, just showing confidence that they can know and they can figure it out if they're given that opportunity. Because I know, some of my clients, you can tell when the parents jump in so fast that the kids are used to sitting back and letting their parents take over, versus having a coach have the confidence that they can answer the question if they just give it a few minutes and put some thought into it. So it's nothing too magical. It's just kind of having, showing confidence that they do know, giving them space to think, and pointing out the pattern, like when it happens. Like especially if it's like a more difficult question, or if it's an area they don't really want to go, that could be an occasion too. If that makes sense. Help.
I think I just thought of the powerful question to come back at when they say, I don't know, say, well, what if you did know? And just leave it at that and just sit. I think I'll try that today. I have a client this afternoon that literally says, I don't know, constantly. And I did at one point say, that's not allowed. I just said, we're not saying that anymore. But I think I like the way to, maybe I'll come back with a more powerful question about it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think 2 other tricks I use. I'll say, well, what would your friend say? Because sometimes it's easier for them to step out and look at it from the perspective of their peers. And then the other one is, I do it as a challenge. It's like, I'd like to challenge you to not say, I don't know, or to, to help them start to recognize when they do it. Because it is a habit a lot of times. So I might do it as just make it like an experiment, or kind of like, don't make it a bad thing. Just like, hey, let's see how many times we can focus on, we can recognize, or you can recognize when you do use it. Which seems, then they're like, oh, I do it. They start to realize how often they do it.
Another question, Kay, for your arsenal and the I don't know is, what do you know? What are you certain of? Mm-hmm. Kind of work at it that way.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and then I also, for the I don't know, if it is a pattern, I point out it's a pattern. But then I also just coach around, well, what's it like not to know?
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel not to know? How would you feel differently if you did know? How important is it for you to know? Because then I just coach around the I don't know. Because, just be in the moment as like, how would you feel differently if you did know? What would you need to do to know?
Those are great.
Hayden, I like that one. What's it like to not know?
I mean, when I've worked with some young adults before, the not knowing and actually honing in on what's it like not to know, it can get actually kind of emotional, because then the client realizes that they haven't taken the time to gain clarity on what's important in their life. And then it gets really deep. It goes really deep into the session, which is great. That's what we want. But, it just reminds me of one specific client who, like, she always said, I don't know. And she's a young adult. She's a college graduate, but just having her just think about, like, she started crying because she's like, I just don't know what I want in my life. So I'm like, what if you did know? And then she's like, I would be so more confident and I would be happier. And I'm like, well, then let's spend our time together trying to know. And that's what it was all about. And it was really cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I wonder how many people, it's not just teenagers or young people, but how many people have been challenged to take the time to think, to take the time to really process and sort through and come to that place of know, where they know.
Mm-hmm. I've also encountered a lot of clients who really were in touch with their innate knowing at one time. And for whatever reason, it was negated, not acknowledged by themselves or others. And so they just left it as that they don't have that capacity anymore. They just adopted the belief that it's just not possible for them anymore because it was never nurtured or, used for whatever reason, a laundry list of reasons. And so once they realize that they do have that, as well as everybody else does, that kind of innate, intuitive knowing about what is actually true for them, what works for them, then things start to shift really quickly, in my experience.
that's a really interesting way to think about I don't know, that the I don't know could be a belief. And you have to help them bust that belief.
Yeah, I think it starts in schools. I've seen it start with where the kids know the answers, but they're not able to show the work. So then they're told that they couldn't possibly know because of that. And so from a academic point of view, I see that kind of patterning. So because they can't do it in the procedure that is outlined, that they start saying, well, I guess I really don't know them because I can't do these steps 1 through 5, but I actually went to 6 and I had a 1, 3, 5, 6 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that wasn't accepted. So it patterns everywhere from that and academics, and then to just other places in their life.
Actually, where I've witnessed that is students, typically young students, who have gone from 1 to 8, where the teacher really wanted them to go from 1 to 4. And so they were told, no. And over time, if that happens often enough, they start to lose confidence.
Yeah, teachers always say, show your work. And a lot of kids don't want to show their work, but they've got it all up here, but they get told they don't know it because they didn't show their work.
And then sometimes pointing out to our clients that, if we suspect that they're saying I don't know, is safer than being proven wrong. That's another thing too, is there's this fear of being wrong. So they really do know something, but they don't want to be wrong. So they just say, I don't know. So that's a common pattern as well.
Yeah.
So the fear of failure. And the interesting thing about getting students to believe that they know is that's helping them trust their intuition and helping them trust their gut and listen to it. First realize that they have something to say, that they can access parts of themselves that they may not have paid attention to or listened to, and that they can learn to trust that.
Sometimes I challenge them to just try that out, playing games. Like, next time the phone rings, without looking at it, ask and see if you know who it is. Because that's a common area where people always know that, oh, I was just thinking about you, and then the phone rang and it was you. How many times have we heard that from all different kinds of people? And then the other place is like playing cards. And they have all these little apps now, it's like, do you know what cards are coming up? Or do you have a feeling about what cards are coming? If you need solitaire, you're like, all right, so which place should I play next? And just make it really fun so that they can kind of experiment with it, and something that completely has no consequences to it, So if you guessed wrong, you still answer the phone, and it's not a big deal. It's just like nothing lost, nothing gained there. And the same with just playing online cards, something like that, or even a real card, so more tactile, stuff like that.
And finding ways to help the client experiment that don't feel like there's such high stakes, is also an interesting thought. Sometimes when I'm challenging a client, sometimes I say, let's experiment with, but other times I say, let's just play with this. Let's just play with this idea, play with this concept and see what happens. And, nothing right or wrong. Let's just have fun with it and see what you notice. And that's a looser, softer way to hold it, that gives permission to go ahead and try it without worrying about the consequences.
And Gina, now my mind's going all different places, and I'm thinking about and also giving them space for times when it's okay to not know. Especially I did a career fair the other week, and just everybody's like, well, what do you want? Where are you going? What do you want to do? And kids are under so much pressure, and just ask them what do you want to do? And if they say, I don't know, you explore that then as a coach. You ask questions around that, and it's okay. They don't have to give you a direct answer, but it's more about digging deeper and seeing what they do know and where that could take them versus, in giving them a contrast to the expectations that they often see that they should know at 16 what they want to do with their life. So I just think it's interesting to think about when to kind of call them on it as a pattern in response to coaching questions, but when it's okay in terms of the bigger life picture, anything else, when it's okay to not know at this stage.
And there will be times when you bring up a really good point, Lindsay, when the client really doesn't know, when something's happening in their life, you say, well, how do you feel about that? I don't know. And they really, there's a lot they need to process. So you're right to draw the distinction between the habit, the student that says, I don't know all the time, or seems to be doing that to avoid a situation, versus the very real times when a client honestly doesn't know, and acknowledging that, and then helping them decide how they can help themselves to know.
Like Lindsay, I'm thinking I'm going in a couple, my mind's, all the ideas are popping about that as well. And that point that you had about being 16 and the expectations of society and others around teenagers to make a choice that feels like the rest of your life is really, can be really daunting. And as I look back and reflect on my own life and different careers and different paths that I've taken, it's really, I'm aware now that's the invitation I would like to be to teenagers, is for them to just try something and know that it's not forever and that you can keep choosing. Yeah, that's I'm really aware of that right now. I mean, whatever happened to the do-over? Like when you were kids and you're playing a game, if you ever observe kids on a playground and they're playing something, a game or a role or a scenario, and it's not working for them, they just say, all right, let's do this over, or let's try this again. Let's try something else. And it's such a freeing space of no judgment and a lot of creation and possibility happening in the energy there.
I think the reason that I see, Julie, for the and sort of blends what Lindsay and Julie, what you were saying, and that is that when we get to the college application process, I work with a lot of teens on that. You do have to make some decisions on what kind of secondary education you're going to go to. And there's a certain amount of pressure because school is so expensive to make sure you're on a reasonably right path, so that you don't go 3 years into a liberal arts school, for instance, and then decide, I really want to be an engineer, and need to start over again. And I think that creates some of the pressure to start making some decisions earlier than what might naturally happen.
And then to the points that we've all been making, to piggyback with that, is that's where the really valuing, finding the values, what really floats your boat, flips your switch,
Yeah.
What kind of things really interest you. Yeah.
Okay. So anything else on how coaches decide what questions to best ask? That's where we started with this. And a philosophy of questioning. Actually, that's an interesting term, philosophy of questioning. I'm not sure I even know what my philosophy of questioning is.
I don't know what that really means, other than it makes me think. I mean, I think my questioning and my time with clients is always about I want to empower them, and I want them to come to their own strength.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my philosophy, is always that I am just there to empower them.
Mm.
So I don't know if that's what that means.
Mm. I think it's open for interpretation, however we want to interpret it.
Well, I mean, the philosophy of questioning kind of just reminds me of a bigger question on like our philosophy as a coach, you know, because for me, it kind of goes hand in hand. And I never really specifically thought about my philosophy as a coach, but I was like interviewed by someone and he asked me like, what's your philosophy in coaching? So I guess it made me think, but I think my philosophy in coaching, which I guess goes hand in hand with my philosophy of questioning, is that, you know, the belief that everyone already has everything, you know, inside of him or herself to be successful. And even when the client says, I don't know, do a question, this philosophy still applies. I'm like, it's okay that you don't know, but I bet at some point you have it inside of you to find out, to know, you know? So I guess that's where I'm coming from. So I think that might even help with if we take the time to write down our philosophy of questioning, our philosophy as a coach. That probably goes back to our first topic of the day, kind of like our identity of a coach.
Yeah.
Kind of goes full circle. Our philosophy of our questioning and coaching goes back to our identity.
Yeah.
And our values, right? Like Julie was saying.
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting discussion. Thank you very much. And let me ask, we're seeking a topic or a set of topics for April. Anything on your minds that you'd like for us to explore and talk about and discuss?
I'm wondering what would happen if we started asking ourselves that and started posting in the Facebook group.
If we asked ourselves which?
Like what coaching topics are up for us? And maybe just to start noticing if there's any patterns.
Mm-hmm.
What I really enjoyed today about what was powerful is somebody posed a question and everybody, you know, shared their experiences about that for the benefit of all of us. And even though nothing's popping right now, I just have a feeling that I'm going to start noticing some things working with clients in the next couple of weeks that might give us an insight to a topic or questions to ask for next time.
Yeah, so let me ask that you do that you be just noticing what you're wondering about, what you'd be interested in sharing and learning about what other coaches do, or expanding for yourself, or starting for yourself.
Well, is everybody in the closed ALC Facebook group? You know, if you guys are, if we would love to have you guys, you know, talk about how great our discussions are on these calls. And it'd be great if you could, you know, post to the community, like ask them some questions so then it can help us, you know, get get more people on these calls and have a greater discussions. That'd be cool. I think that's a great idea, Julie, to maybe even, we don't have to have an answer. This is a good example of not knowing.
Yeah, right. I wanted to say I don't know, but I didn't dare.
We don't know what we're going to discuss next month, but my philosophy tells me that we will find the answer somehow.
Yeah, right.
Inside of us.
Thank you, Julie. That would be a great way to start. And if independently, as this is now in the background of your mind, and it'll be kind of running back there in the background. If anything occurs to you, please shoot it out to Hayden or to me or both of us to place in front of us.
I'll say real quick, just before I forget, just something I was so excited to hear everybody else's input on the I don't know, that if anybody has occurring issues like that or just patterns they start to see, if we could something sharing that from our experience. I mean, I learned so much just from hearing how each of you would respond to similar situations. So I think that's a really cool way to grow as a community if we can all learn from each other's experience of patterns or common questions, common issues. And the other thing was different niches. If people have different niches they love, why and what do they love about it?
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next session, we're always the first Tuesday of every month, and so that will be Tuesday, April 5th at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 noon Central Time. Okie dokie. And I'll be sending out this recording.
Cool. Thank you for doing the recording.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks. You too.
Bye. Bye.